Will current global phenomena contribute to the world speaking one language one day? Should you learn a certain language right now to prepare for the future? Or will Hitler just find the fountain of youth in Argentina, gain immortality, and then force the entire world's population to speak German? The answers to these questions may surprise you. Let's talk about them. Hey guys, it's Cole, and it's pretty well known that English is the so-called international language. Did you know that only 50% of all the content on the internet is in English, despite the fact that only 5% of the world's population speaks it as a native language? It's also the lingua franca, or common language, for business and pop culture, stretching from Hollywood, the music industry, and politics, all the way to airport signs and airline pilots. Many cultures around the world consider the English language to be a symbol of modernity, but that may change sooner than we all realize. Dynamic international forces such as world markets, globalization, mass immigration, and population growth are all shaping the very way that this world is run. And over time, they may very well change the languages that we all use to communicate. One big piece of this puzzle lies in the languages that we will not be using in the future. The fact is, languages are being wiped out faster than ever before. Researchers suggest that roughly 90% of this world's 6,500 plus languages will be either extinct or endangered by the end of this century. Not only that, but it's estimated that a language, along with its history and culture, goes extinct every other week. And this is happening for a lot of reasons, but at the end of the day, our need to communicate with people of other cultures will keep on increasing as the world becomes more modernized and interconnected. When you think about major, influential languages in the world other than English, what comes to your mind? You may think of Mandarin Chinese, Arabic, French, Russian, Spanish, and others. But the way that I see it, only a few of those languages even have the potential to overtake English as the global lingua franca. Let's make a case for a few of them. Mandarin Chinese. Known for its vast cultural heritage, tremendous East Asian influence, and its absolute nightmare of a writing system, is not a contender for the global lingua franca. Here's why. Despite the fact that there are over 1.3 billion native speakers of Chinese, yeah, with a B, the majority of them are concentrated in one country, China. And yes, while China's economy is quite impressive and by some metrics will overtake the US's economy in a little under a decade, it has a serious population problem. According to a peer-reviewed study done by the University of Washington, China's population is projected to decline 48% by the year 2100, with a 64% decline in its demographic aged 20 to 24. But how exactly is this significant? Well, it just happens to be the prime age range for China's military recruits and working class. Here's what the academic folk call a population pyramid of China. It's supposed to break down the total population of a country by grouping together demographics of biological sex and age. Now, notice that it doesn't look like a pyramid at all. That's because the country is in a huge population decline, as seen by the graph on the right. For some clarity, here's Nigeria's population pyramid, which tells us that its population is rapidly growing. While China's economy is on a big rally right now, it's very, very unlikely that what they're doing right now is sustainable in the long run. And with a sharp decline in their labor force, the probability of their economic growth is questionable at best. And if we also consider the vast linguistic differences that exist between Mandarin Chinese and Latin-based languages, it's very difficult to imagine that billions of people will suddenly start learning Chinese in the near future. But what about Spanish? Even though Spanish has less total speakers than both Chinese and English, it is much more widely spoken than Chinese, with most of its speakers being from Mexico and South America. It's even predicted that the United States will beat Mexico to become the largest Spanish-speaking country in the world by 2050. I can definitely see this happening, and it'll be really interesting to see how this surge of Spanish in the US will affect the American image and culture, especially considering that more and more Americans are deciding to learn Spanish every single day anyway. It's also an official language in 31 countries! Many in developing countries that have huge potential to develop really powerful economies, like in Mexico and Argentina. It's also relatively easy for speakers of languages derived from Latin to learn, which make up a good portion of the world's population. No doubt that it is and will be a super important language in the near future regarding business, commerce, the music industry, and tons of other things. Where'd my sombrero go? But there's one region of the world, one absolute wild card that everyone always seems to overlook. Africa. You see, Africans speak a ton of different languages, but unfortunately, The majority of them are minority languages that are quickly dying out. And besides English as a lingua franca in Africa, what are we left with? Which language, depending on how Africa develops in the near future, could make a huge impression on the world stage? The answer is, of course, French! 29 different countries in Africa already speak it. Not only that, but these French speakers are situated in one of the most fastest growing areas in the entire world, Sub-Saharan Africa. In a UNICEF report, it was said that Africa's population could hit 4 billion people by 2100, making up over 40% of the global population. Right now, poor infrastructure in these countries, amongst other things, is what's preventing them from reaching global world markets and from attaining economic prosperity. In other words, this region of the world is incredibly underdeveloped and holds endless potential. If this were to change in the coming decades, it's not unreasonable to think that French as a language could grow at an incredible rate, perhaps even boasting the title of the most spoken language in the world. But with all this said, however, there is absolutely nothing indicating that English will be going away anytime soon. But before we finish up here, I would like to share one more very interesting idea with you. The idea of one true, ubiquitous, international language spoken by everybody in the world. There are a few people in this world that spend a great deal of time creating their own languages, and they're known as constructed languages. They're not native to any specific region in the world, nor to any group of people that have ever existed before. They're an idea, an experiment, with a common ultimate goal of unifying the entirety of humanity under one language. The vast majority of these languages have been forgotten, but there's one that has stood the test of time. It's known as Esperanto, and it was created by a Polish linguist in the 1870s and designed to be incredibly easy to learn. If you speak a Romance or Germanic languages, there's a great chance that you understand a good amount of Esperanto. However, given that I'm not speaking it right now, it ultimately failed in its mission. However, there are remarkably several million speakers of Esperanto in niche communities all around the world today. Finally, after everything that we've said, which language should you learn if you want to prepare for the future? The answer is whichever one that interests you the most. Don't worry about the number of speakers or the perceived usefulness of the language or about what other people say about it. Focus on what you like the most and then pursue it. We can spend an endless amount of time speculating about the future, but if there's one thing that we can learn about the history of humanity, is that we'll always find a way to deal with what happens. And really guys, sometimes it happens. With 2020 being a perfect example of this. Whether you want to learn Chinese or Icelandic, you will make far more progress in the language that you enjoy the most, because after all, you don't get rich for learning languages. You do it for the people and for the personal fulfillment that you get from the journey itself. And no, Hitler is long dead and the Fountain of Youth doesn't exist. What do you think the language of the future is? Will there always be a linguistic barrier between humans, or will some new experiment like Esperanto come along and change everything? It's something to think about. Let me know in the comments what you think. You can check out 2 more of my videos here. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and peace.